Welcome to the Travel Agent Podcast. I'm your host, Aylin Blanco. I interview successful industry professionals and share my personal journey to becoming a travel agent. The show is for aspiring travel agents and travel professionals at every level. My mission is to uncover the universal keys to thrive in this business. Join me as I take a closer look into the life of a travel agent. Hello, and welcome to the Travel Agent Podcast. Today, we have a wonderful guest. She's going to tell us a little bit about herself, and we're going to get into the interview.
Hey, Aylin, thank you so much for having me. I am Lindsey Epperly. I own Epperly Travel. We are a boutique luxury travel agency based out of Atlanta, but we are a team of 19 that are actually scattered all around the Southeast for the most part, but kind of the East Coast in general. A mix of ICs and employees and people that have been doing this a long time, like myself, 10 years, and people that are brand new to the industry. So it's a fun team to learn from.
Awesome. So since you've been in the industry 10 years, how did you find yourself in the travel industry?
Yeah, so I always joke. I feel like everyone kind of has a different story about how travel found them. It was not me going and seeking it, but travel found me when I was 19. And I was a college student looking for a brochure from a local travel agency in my hometown over the summer. And I walked in to get that brochure and I walked out with a job by accident. So it was like this total fluke. I had just gotten back from studying abroad, and like every, basic college girl that just studied abroad, that's all you talk about. So I walked into this agency and talking about France and what I did in France. And they said, you would be really good at travel sales, at being a travel agent. And I was like, what is that? I don't even know why I'm here. My mom sent me to get this brochure. And they're like, we think that you could probably like market to your friends in college, like anyone getting married, things like that. So at 19, when you're in that stage of life where you say yes to everything, I was there and I said yes to this, and the rest is history.
That's a great story. It's funny. That's actually how I got my first job in college, except for it was a cell phone place.
Love it. The accidental jobs are really the best ones.
Right. So what do you wish you kind of would have known when you first started that you would tell somebody who's starting right now?
Yeah, gosh, to think back 10 years ago, I'll tell you what I've built between then and now. A lot of it has been to help other people avoid the pitfalls that I fell into because I had no idea. And when I first started, there were so few people under the age of, 80 in the travel industry.
Right.
I don't mean that to be offensive. I just mean I would walk into a room at 19 and people were like, oh, you've got the wrong room. And I'm like, no, I'm supposed to be at this travel conference. I'm a travel agent. And they were like, are you sure? So, so what I wish I would have known then, and again, it's like been a series of pitfalls, things I've learned the hard way. And that's now why I have a team that I'm helping learn, avoid my mistakes. I very much wish I would have known what I was doing, for one. I think, imposter syndrome is a real thing. And when you jump into the travel industry and you have no idea what you're doing, you're oftentimes told to fake it till you make it. And while I don't think that's horrible advice, I do think finding someone else that you can learn from, or finding a community and a tribe that you can learn from. I was very fortunate when I walked into my first travel week, where I was part of a Virtuoso agency, and I still am, just different now. But I happened to connect with the other people in the room that were about my same age group, and we have remained friends for the past 10 years. They've been my closest friends and confidants, but I've learned more from those people because I built a community immediately versus just what I was learning from my surrounding host agency. And I think that's probably something that I would tell other people is really make sure you're thinking through your current status and where that's going to get you. And that's also something I wish I would have known 10 years ago is, where am I going? I was very much at 19 kind of in the idea phase of one foot in front of the other, and I'll just kind of build this book of business. And then suddenly it turned into I'll build a brand, and then it turned into I'll build a business. And I'm thankful for that. My intuition's always got me that one foot in front of the other mentality. But I wish I had known 10 years ago this is what I was building, because I would have done things a little bit different.
That makes complete sense. And I feel like this is just a resonating theme over and over again, is that this relationships and building a community, it's so, so important in the travel industry specifically, just because we're kind of all home-based, travel agents. And it's who do I turn to? So I love that this is just keeps coming up because I want people to realize that building a community is so, so important.
I feel like the like mantra of today's travel agent is relationship driven, but a lot of times people think that's just between you and your client. And it really is not. It's like between you and your peers. It should be community over competition. There's enough business for all of us to go around. And also you and your suppliers. So like it is such a relationship driven business. And if you only feel like it's one-sided with the client, like you're going to miss out on this whole other awesome opportunity of relationships that I think is like the coolest part of the industry. Because you don't meet an unfriendly travel agent for the most part, or you don't meet an unfriendly supplier. Like they're all super excited and happy to do business and love being in the travel industry.
And I come from a sales background. And so that was the first thing that you learn. It's about relationship building. And so the fact that there's kind of this disconnect because you're selling travel. So you are a salesperson. And so all of the sales training comes into play. I don't know why it kind of just feels like, oh, well, we're selling dreams.
Right. Well, it's such a I can't think of another thing that I can really compare it to because it's as much sales as it is service. And the service is where that relationship part comes in. But like sometimes people I think are very binary and think it's either one or the other. And it's like, no, you got to have like equal parts of both to really be successful as a modern day travel agent.
I agree. So what is something that you feel like you failed at miserably, but you are an absolute rock star now?
Something I failed at miserably. Okay. So when I was about 5 years into my career as a one-woman show, when I decided like, I want to be a mama bird. I would like to bring on people under me and help mentor people. Like I really, again, my whole life was about like, how do I help others avoid the pitfalls that I fell into? So I really wanted to bring on a team. And about that 5-year mark was actually when I launched Epperly Travel. And I made a bunch of changes at that point, like obviously rebranding, building it out as a team. And I suddenly had this like power and influence to hire people. And I thought like, just because I can hire, I should hire. And so when I first launched this new business, I brought on 10 brand new to industry ICs. And that was so silly because I was stretching myself so thin. I was not able to like pour into them as the leader that I was promising I was going to be. And then on the other side of things, I had this whole book of business that like, what am I supposed to do with that? I didn't have an assistant. I didn't have anything. So like, I have always been a very big picture thinker. And unfortunately that hurts me sometimes because I don't think about the like actual execution of that. I just think like, here's the dream. I'm going to go after it tomorrow and make it happen right now. And I really should have been more strategic. And I tell people this a lot because of what I've built in Epperly Travel, I get approached by advisors all the time who are saying like, I want to build a team. What should I do? And I'm like, your first thing is you should get your book of business in order. So if that means hiring an assistant or an intern or someone to help you manage what you've built as like, this is your nest egg, this is where most of your income is coming in. And you also don't want to mess up your clients that you've worked so hard for because you're focusing on building a team. Because like, I'll be honest, the income does not shake out for quite some time on the team side of things. You've got to make sure you protect that like initial building block of your business. So that was something I very much learned the hard way and failed. I don't feel like I just failed miserably. I feel like I failed in a very obvious light. Like I had to go to many of these individuals and tell them like, I can't be the leader that I promised you I could be. And I'm so sorry, I'm not going to be able to help you in your career. And that, like, I felt like a horrible person for having to do that. It felt like I was breaking up with 5 people of like and it truly was, it's not you, it's me. Like I overpromised here. But thank God I admitted that early on instead of like hindering them at all. And it's just something I learned the hard way.
I think self-awareness is one of the most underrated skills that you can have. And that's great that you were able to see that and correct that before it kind of blew up. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
I am also a big picture person and learning that, the big picture's great, but let's be strategic.
So it's funny. I think I told you this when you and I first met, that my husband quit his job in finance to come work alongside me in the travel business. And like, as much as I am right-brained big picture, he is left-brained operational. And so he jokes that like, we're the couple that it's the middle of the night and I'm like, hey, I have this idea. It's going to change everything. And we've got to change everything to make it happen. And then I like fall back asleep and I'm fine. And he's like sitting there wide awake, wheels turning of like, how am I going to make this happen? He's the how guy. I'm the why girl. And it's such a funny dynamic, but you need both sides of that brain. Otherwise, like I am a a shoot first, aim second type of person. Sometimes that works.
Me too. And sometimes it really works out. So you think that you can keep doing it until it doesn't.
You get lucky. But you know what? It's gotten me to where I am. I'm like happy with it. But if you can step back and think a little bit smarter on things, like probably you should. Agreed.
So what do you think is the most important thing you've gained so far in the industry?
So for me, like, I want to give this cheesy answer of like friendships, but like just like we were talking about, like the relationships in this industry are the most important thing to me. I mean, they have influenced who I've become, not just as a travel advisor, but as a leader. And they're what make us great as an advisor, but at the same time, like, we can pour into one another. And it's that whole idea I mentioned earlier of like community over competition, like the fact that we can share with one another. And then suddenly it's not just a business acquaintance, it's actually a friend. Like, these are people that are at my wedding. These are people that, were there when their babies are being born. Like, that is a true test of what this industry can give you. And yes, of course you can meet coworker friends in all industries, but there's something really different about the travel industry. And I think a large part of that too is you often get to travel with people and you find out, like, who are your people? Who can I spend 10 days in Bali with and not want to kill? And those are your best friends now.
Right. I haven't actually gotten to do that yet. So I'm actually looking forward to traveling I used to travel by myself, and then I started traveling with my family, like my entire family. And so I haven't actually gone on like vacations and with people who I'm not related to. So I'm looking very forward to figuring out that dynamic. And you're right. I don't know if I've spent 10 days with anybody I wasn't related to that I had to love after. So,
well, and truly, some of them you don't. Sometimes you realize, like, well, this is a time to realize this is not going to be a friendship forever. This was a fam trip, and that is it. And we leave this here. But then sometimes those relationships develop, and like, to me, that is the coolest thing of what I've gotten as a travel advisor is like this group of really important people. And it keeps growing. Like, every year I go to a conference, even just something like this, like hearing you on your podcast, I reached out to be like, thank you for doing this, because I'm also hearing about people that I never would have met otherwise because they're not in my consortia. So I love how far and big the reach is of the industry and how open people are to talking to one another usually. I just think that's the coolest thing.
I am excited. Like, the relationships just from this podcast it has literally changed my life. And I'm so glad that you reached out, because we're going to be friends forever. So what is the most exciting thing that you have going on in business and in life right now?
Oh, in business and in life. So I'll touch on this a little bit. I'm passionate about helping people, and specifically people in the travel industry. I'm passionate about being a mentor. And at Epperly Travel, so we've been around for 5 years, and most of the people on my team are brand new to the travel industry. It was just something that I loved, like bringing people in as baby birds and like watching them hatch and fly and like spread their wings. And that makes me so proud. Something that I started to realize, though, I was doing this internal training program, and I had done 3 years of that, and I would bring on like just a few people each year through this program. And it was becoming limiting. Honestly, it was becoming, I was meeting really good, amazing people throughout the entire year. And I did not have the capacity to train or hire each of these people. And I was like, I have a specific vision for Epperly, and I know there are other people that can be successful, and I want to find a way to pour into them. So what I wound up doing, my husband and I actually worked on this together. We launched a totally separate travel training program called Epperly Travel. And the basis is entrepreneurship and travel. So it's, how do you become a successful independent contractor by looking at your business as a business? And that's what I love teaching people. So like, everything that's in there is scripted by like what I have always taught my ICs, but it's done in a way that's totally separate from Epperly. And that was very intentional. Because we want people to be able to go through it no matter what their host is, no matter what their consortia is, like a modern day CTA style program that's actually like addressing the needs of this industry and of the ICs. Because as you have seen, probably a lot of the training out there is either super, super dated, or it's a feeder program to one specific agency. And it's like, well, if you're not a good culture fit for that agency, or if it's just not what you want to do, like, you shouldn't have to be tied into one agency just because they offer training and no one else is offering it. There should be something standalone. So this was my answer to that. And that's what I'm probably most excited about right now is not just having worked on that for the past several months, but having launched it actually this past month. And the feedback that we're receiving has been really cool so far.
Congratulations. I'm excited to hear more about it. So we'll definitely be talking later for sure.
Happy to help and address any questions. And like I mentioned, like I was invested in the like foundation of it, the building of it, and now it's becoming like its standalone separate thing where like I'm hoping it can spread its wings. And my focus is Epperly Travel, which is what it has always been, and that's what I'm most passionate about. Is like, all right, how do I help my team? Where do we grow? Where do we go next? Actually, you mentioned like what am I most excited that we're working on? I, for so long, was doing so much in sales that I didn't have the capacity to work on the business. I was working so much in the business. So this past year, a large part of what my husband and I have done together is building out a strategy to get me mostly out of sales. So I'm able to sit kind of overseeing everything. I'm still involved in like my original client book, but really that's being managed completely by Becca on my team, who's phenomenal. And I am now able to pour into our salespeople more because of that. And I'm able to pour into the company more because of that. So as excited as I am about our whole separate venture of Entre Travel, I'm just as excited about being at Epperly and able to like future forecast and say like, all right, 2020, here's what we're expecting to happen in the travel industry. And here's how we at Epperly are going to be marketing differently. Here's how I'm going to encourage my agents to approach their clients differently. Like it's thinking strategically and big picture, which is what I'm best at. So I'm no longer bogged down with like every single sale that's coming through the door. I think that's where a lot of people who have the desire to be an owner or a CEO find themselves getting stuck. And I was stuck for years with it. So it's not an easy transition.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about that later because I, having these interviews, that is a definite pain point, is working in instead of on. So there's something coming up about that. So that was a great segue into the 2020 of Travel Agent Podcast. So where can our audience find you?
So, I mean, you guys are always welcome to follow me on my personal Instagram account, which is at Lindsey Epperly. But I'd also encourage people to follow the Epperly Travel account. I am on there pretty regularly too, like doing Instagram stories and trying that whole thing out. Although I'm not totally convinced that that's like what I love, but it still is a fun way to connect with our clients. And then of course, www.epperlytravel.com is our agency's website. We're on Facebook. I mentioned that we're in Atlanta, but we run a completely remote team. So I would encourage people that are listening to this, like my advisors love meeting new people. Like if you guys are in the same cities as one of the advisors, like they love going out and getting coffee and like, just like you and I are doing, like collaborating. And at the end of the day, like even if we're not in the same city, we do so many Zoom meetings. Like that's how I run the entire organization is we have monthly meetings on Zoom. We have monthly open office hours on Zoom. I do like an entire like coffee and conversations with each team member on Zoom. So this is kind of today's day and age.
And all of her information will be on her blog post. So is there anything that you feel that we didn't talk about that's super important to like a new travel agent?
Yeah. I mean, I think, we touched on training a little bit, but I would drive that point home. For new travel advisors, especially people that are like brand new to the industry and are still trying to figure out like, what have I gotten myself into? Which I think that's many of us even for years.
Right.
Still, sometimes I ask myself that question, but you have to invest in yourself. And so whether that's some sort of training that's actually going to teach you how to be successful, I'm not talking about the training that's going to teach you like, I say the boring stuff, like our training program, you teaches the boring stuff. You have to know the legal side of things and all of that, but like something that's going to teach you tangibles. You can walk away and say, I have a business plan. I have a plan of action to move forward. And beyond just training too, investing in yourself for travel purposes. So, I'm a big believer that like we have to be out there experiencing the product and learning it more. So whether that's familiarization trips or that's some sort of travel conference where you're actually like learning and meeting your suppliers, like that's worth every dollar that you could spend. Like I actually, in our training program, but also at Epperly Travel, encourage new advisors to make a financial plan where everything that you've got coming in, because especially with this job, if you're completely sales-based, you need a financial plan, period. But I talk about reinvesting that money so that you are growing your business. You've got to spend money to make money. And I think that if you're a smart hustler and entrepreneur, you learn that from day one. So where is that money going? I don't personally want it to go to a $2,000 ad in a magazine that I'm never going to see a return from. I would rather spend that on a plane ticket to go visit a destination that I'm getting asked about the most. Like whatever it is that's reinvesting in you and your game plan for things, and make sure you have a game plan.
I love that. Investing in yourself has the biggest return in any industry and just in your personal life. And so I love all the things that we've talked about today. Like, I feel more and more as I grow into the podcast that there's like 5 overarching themes, and it's just a couple of things I feel like a lot of people just don't even talk about. And investing in yourself is one of them. Like, if you don't invest in yourself, who's going to invest in you?
Absolutely. Well, and gosh, Aylin, I love that like the topics that you're tackling are the things that people are not talking about. And that's what I think, me as someone that's been in this for 10 years, I'm like screaming at the top of my lungs, like, why is no one talking about the fact that like, one, this job is not get rich quick. Like, this is hard. This is hard work. It's going to take you 1.5 to 2 years to build your book of business. Why is this the first time you're hearing that? Like, why did your host agency not tell you that up front? It's things that like, I shoot it to you straight. Like, I like being direct on things, and you need to know that so you can prepare yourself. It's not because someone's trying to like bait and switch you. But unfortunately, I think a lot of big companies that just want the volume do play that game a little bit. So I love that you're calling these things out and calling to attention. Like, here are the 5 things that no one's talking about, and here's why you need to know about them from day one in your career.
Because I went an entire year of thinking that I knew what was going on, and I didn't. And so like you, I was like, I have to tell people.
Yes. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for doing that. I wish I would have had this resource 10 years ago instead of just like floundering around a little bit on my own.
Well, I'm still floundering a bit, but
yeah, well, same.
I don't know if the, I'll end up swimming like a fish, but we'll walk through the journey.
There is no doubt that you will, because you're going after the right things. You're asking the right questions. And that's such a big, important part of this is like, you've got to take your career and your future and your success into your own hands. Like, no one else is going to build you and make you successful. Like, you got to hustle for that.
And that is the truth. And I think that is a perfect place to end this interview, because that is the whole truth.
That's true.
Right? So thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so much fun. I'm so glad that I met you.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me, Aylin. It's been a really good conversation.
Thank you for joining the Travel Agent Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Visit thetraveleagentpodcast.com for more information about today's episode and other travel agent resources. Be sure to tune in every Thursday for new episodes. Until next time, continue to build a travel business you love.